You are surrounded by people who simply do not think clearly, and it is draining every bit of energy you have. You believe your intelligence is your greatest strength, but here is the brutal truth. It is actually your greatest weakness. Society tells you to be patient with those who do not understand, to use logic, to find common ground, to educate. Arthur Schopenhauer knew better. He understood something most people never want to accept. Logic is completely powerless against foolishness. Trying to reason with someone who refuses to think is not noble. It is intellectual self-destruction. There is a hidden structure to neutralizing people like this, a method used by the sharpest minds in history to protect themselves from the willfully ignorant. Once you understand how it works, no lesser mind will ever drain you again. You know the feeling. You are sitting somewhere, a boardroom, a family dinner, a comment section online. Someone is speaking with total, unshakable confidence about something they fundamentally do not understand. The pressure builds inside your chest. Your mind instantly spots every flaw in what they are saying. You gather your thoughts. You form your argument carefully. You deliver it clearly and completely, and they just stare at you. They blink. And then they repeat the exact same wrong point even louder than before. You walk away exhausted, drained, questioning your own mind. Why does this keep happening? Why do you lose when you are clearly the one who is right? Because you are caught inside what I call the intelligence trap. You are projecting your own way of thinking onto someone whose mind simply cannot operate that way. Smart people carry a deadly assumption, the belief that everyone around them values the truth. You assume that if you show the right evidence, the other person will examine it, update their thinking, and come around to the facts. Schopenhauer saw through this completely. In his sharp and unforgiving work on argument and persuasion, he identified a dark and unchanging law of human behavior. People do not argue to discover the truth. They argue to win, to dominate, to feel important. Psychology has a name for part of this: the Dunning-Kruger Effect, the mental tendency where people with low ability carry an almost delusional level of confidence. But just knowing the concept is not enough. You need to understand the weight of it. Ignorance is not simply the absence of knowledge. It is an active defense, a wall built to protect the ego. When you bring logic to a fool, they do not see a chance to grow. They see a threat, and the human ego will destroy everything around it before it ever admits it was wrong. Daniel Kahneman, in his landmark work on thinking and decision-making, described two systems inside the human mind. System 1 is fast, emotional, and automatic. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and analytical. People with low awareness are permanently locked inside System 1. They feel something, attach a quick opinion to it, and treat it as solid fact. You, as a thinking person, are attempting to engage them using System 2. You are offering nuance. You are presenting data, but it is a translation failure. You are speaking advanced mathematics to someone who only understands noise. Worse, you are doing all the heavy lifting. You are spending enormous mental energy building a perfectly reasoned case while they spend zero energy simply refusing to hear it. They do not beat you by being smarter. They beat you by lasting longer. They pull you down into the murky waters of their own limited thinking. Schopenhauer saw this clearly 200 years ago. He concluded that truth carries absolutely no value in a debate with someone who does not want it. So what do? If logic fails and careful reasoning is actually a trap, how do you come out ahead? You stop fighting them directly. You use their own momentum against them. Schopenhauer understood that the intellect ultimately serves the will, the blind, emotional, irrational drive that every human being carries. That will always wins. When you argue with a fool, you are giving them precisely what they need: friction, resistance. Friction makes them feel significant. Your visible frustration proves to them that they have power over you. Every time you counter their point, you are quietly telling them their idea deserves your time and your emotion. To truly break the dynamic, you must deny them that friction. How? By using Schopenhauer's most ruthless strategy. Do not disagree. Agree. But agree so completely, so enthusiastically, that you carry their argument all the way to its most ridiculous possible conclusion. In philosophy, this technique is known as reduction to absurdity. In practice, it is simply giving someone enough rope to tangle themselves in. Picture a colleague who insists that all modern art is meaningless and that anyone could produce a masterpiece with no training. The natural response is to argue, to bring up art history, technique, cultural context. Stop. Do not do that. Instead, lean in. Nod slowly. Say, "You are completely right. In fact, since it is that simple, we should both quit our jobs today. We can buy some paint this afternoon. You handle the canvases, I will find the gallery. We should be wealthy by the end of the week. Why are we even here?" Watch their face. You have not challenged them. You have fully accepted their premise, but you have followed it all the way to its natural and disastrous end. Fools think only on the surface. They rarely follow their own ideas to their logical destination. When you force them to look at where their thinking actually leads, something inside them short-circuits. They begin to backtrack. They suddenly introduce the nuance they were attacking you for using. They end up arguing against their own position just to avoid looking ridiculous. You did not defeat them with superior thinking. You let them defeat themselves with their own words. Schopenhauer used this without mercy against the people he considered frauds in academic circles. He refused to engage their ideas as equals. He magnified the internal contradictions of their arguments until the absurdity became impossible to ignore. When you do this, you preserve your own energy. You exit the contest entirely. You become the calm observer watching someone trip over their own feet. But this demands a deeply uncomfortable shift in your own mind. You must eliminate the part of you that needs to be recognized as correct. Intelligent people are quietly addicted to being right. You want the satisfaction of watching the other person concede. You want the moment where they finally say, "I see it now. You were right." Schopenhauer would say that craving acknowledgement from a fool is the most foolish thing an intelligent person can do. Why does it matter whether a limited mind recognizes your thinking? Why do you need someone who cannot see clearly to validate what you can see? The moment you release that need, their provocations lose all power over you. You stop handing them the remote control to your emotions. Let them hold their wrong beliefs. Let them move through the world with their broken map. It is not your responsibility to correct them. Your responsibility is to protect yourself from the damage they cause. And that brings us to something darker, something more urgent. Foolishness is not passive. It spreads. If you spend enough time inside the chaotic mental landscape of an irrational person, your own thinking begins to suffer. Cognitive load theory is clear about this. The human brain has limited mental bandwidth. When you interact closely with a highly irrational person, your mind works overtime. You are trying to anticipate their unpredictable behavior. You are holding back your own frustration. You are constantly walking on unstable ground. Over time, this sustained mental pressure quietly erodes your own judgment. You become irritable. Your decisions get worse. Your creativity fades. You are allowing a parasite to feed on your mental resources. Schopenhauer was famously withdrawn from social circles. People labeled him a misanthrope. They said he despised other people, but read his work carefully. He did not hate humanity. He was simply ruthless about what he allowed into his mental environment. He applied a harsh but clear calculation to human interaction. To engage with a fool is to divide your thinking and multiply your exhaustion. He developed what became known as the porcupine dilemma. On a cold winter night, porcupines move closer together for warmth, but their spines pierce each other and force them apart. They are trapped between freezing alone and being wounded by closeness. The intelligent person must master that same precise distance. You cannot cut all foolish people out of your life. They may be your manager, your client, your neighbor, possibly even someone in your own family, but you can build a psychological barrier. When you are forced to interact with them, you do not bring your real self to the exchange. You send a version of yourself, a calm, polite, unreadable surface. This version nods, smiles, offers short, neutral responses. That is an interesting way to see it. I understand what you mean. There are different ways to look at that. This surface gives them nothing to grip onto. It reflects their own noise back at them while your actual mind stays safely behind a wall of inner calm. You are physically in the room, but mentally you are somewhere they cannot reach. They will believe they are having a real conversation with you. They will feel like they are winning. Let them. The feeling of victory is the cheapest distraction you can offer a fool to keep them out of your way. Do you feel uncomfortable with this? Does something inside you say this is manipulative or arrogant? Good. Notice that feeling, because that guilt is the exact reason you have been suffering. You have been treating people who aggressively attack clear thinking like they are fragile and in need of your protection. A person who loudly insists on their own ignorance and fights anyone who challenges it is not a victim. They are a hazard. Research into institutional thinking failures shows how the pattern of smart people following the most confident and most wrong voice in the room has led to catastrophic outcomes. Entire organizations destroyed. Critical decisions reversed at the worst possible moment. Foolishness operating with confidence is genuinely dangerous. You do not owe it your vulnerability. You do not owe it your time. You must begin to see their ignorance the way you see a natural force. You do not debate a storm. You do not try to reason with a flood. You seal the windows. You move to higher ground. And you wait for it to pass. But what about when the fool holds power over you? What happens when the irrational person controls your salary, your career, or your future? How do you survive inside a system that lifts up the loudest wrong voice in the room? This requires a completely different set of tools. The most dangerous creature is not the predator. It is the frightened animal wearing a crown. When someone of low intelligence gains authority, their entire inner world is built on a foundation of deep, unspoken insecurity. They sense, on a primal level, that sharper minds surround them. They do not respond to this by trying to grow. They respond to it as a survival threat. If you walk into their space and let your intelligence show, you are not demonstrating your value. You are holding a mirror up to their inadequacy. And a fool holding power will smash that mirror rather than look at what it shows. Schopenhauer was direct about this dynamic. He observed that displaying outstanding ability in the presence of mediocre minds is essentially a provocation. The mediocre mind feels something close to physical discomfort when genuine competence is nearby. It produces a quiet and fierce resentment. They will not attack your thinking directly. They will attack who you are. They will call you difficult, uncooperative, not a team player. They will use the rules of the system to slowly wear you down. You cannot out-argue a king inside his own walls. You must outmaneuver him. Look at one of the most instructive examples from ancient Chinese military history. Sima Yi was arguably the most gifted strategic mind of his era, but he found himself working beneath Cao Shuang, a figure of enormous authority and very limited judgment. Cao Shuang was arrogant, impulsive, and deeply threatened by Sima Yi's capabilities. Any open display of intelligence would have meant death. Any visible opposition would have been crushed. So Sima Yi did something that looked like surrender but was actually the most precise strategy of his career. He faked total physical and mental collapse. When spies arrived to observe him, Sima Yi performed the role of a broken, dying old man. He spilled his food. He acted confused. He seemed to have lost all clarity and strength. The spies reported back. Cao Shuang laughed. He felt completely safe. He stopped seeing Sima Yi as a threat and relaxed his guard entirely. Then, the moment Cao Shuang left the capital on a hunting trip, Sima Yi stood up. He seized full military control in a single swift movement and took the entire state. Cao Shuang lost everything because he believed the performance. Sima Yi understood something you need to absorb today. Your intelligence is not something you wear visibly. It is something you conceal and deploy only at the exact right moment. When you are dealing with a powerful fool, give them the one thing their ego is desperately hungry for, the feeling of superiority. Ask them for guidance on small things. Let them correct you on unimportant details. Thank them for their input. You are not submitting to them. You are sedating them. You are feeding their ego enough to make them slow and comfortable while you do the real work out of their sight. You exchange a small, temporary dent to your pride for complete freedom of movement. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to translate a complex reality into terms a simplified mind can process. You draw comparisons. You use examples. You break the idea down to its most basic form, and they still look back at you with empty eyes and repeat the same flawed point they made 20 minutes earlier. This is the heart of the intelligence trap. You keep assuming their failure to understand is a failure in how you explained it. It is not. It is a limitation in how their mind processes information. Research into cognitive bias shows a specific vulnerability that highly intelligent people carry. The belief that everyone else thinks the way they do. You evaluate probability. You weigh different kinds of evidence. You update your conclusions when new information arrives. The fool does not do this. They reach a conclusion first, usually driven by a strong emotion or group loyalty, and then push away everything that contradicts it. Trying to move them toward nuance is like trying to run the most advanced operating system on a device that was built 30 years ago. The hardware simply does not support it. Stop trying to force it. Schopenhauer recommended a sharp departure from the instinct to teach. Among his strategies for navigating arguments with people who are immune to reason, one of the most effective is the precise use of irony. When a fool demands that you agree with something clearly unreasonable, do not push back against it. Instead, say this: "What you are describing is so far beyond my ability to fully grasp that I can only defer to your superior understanding on the matter." They will take that as a compliment. They will feel validated. They will believe they have impressed you. But anyone nearby with even a small amount of awareness will hear exactly what you just did. You insulted them completely, and they thanked you for it. You walked out of the exchange without spending a single unit of mental energy. You must also understand the economics of your own attention. Every hour you spend in debate with a fool is an hour taken from your actual life, your work, your health, the goals that matter to you. Foolish people are energy consumers. They do not create, they absorb. They pull you into endless looping arguments because they have nothing of value to do with their time. Your time is worth something. Theirs in that moment is not. When you engage, you are exchanging something valuable for nothing. End the trade. Walk away. Let them believe they came out ahead. The lion does not lose rest over what the sheep say about it. Now we need to look at the most uncomfortable part of this. The real reason you keep going back to argue with them. It is not only about being right. It is because part of you feels responsible for them. You think, if I can just help them see the truth, things will be better for them. If I can just show them where their thinking breaks down, they will avoid a serious mistake. This is what I call the arrogance of compassion. The hidden belief that you are the one who can save someone from their own limitations. That you are the light that will reach them where no one else has. That belief will drag you under. Kruger and Dunning's foundational research revealed one of the harshest truths in all of psychology. The same mental skills required to perform a task competently are the exact skills required to recognize competence in the first place. This means the most deeply incompetent people completely lack the self-awareness to even detect their own incompetence. They are sealed inside a structure of unearned confidence, blind to their own gaps, comfortable in their certainty. You cannot reach them. They do not want to be reached. The structure protects them from the overwhelming complexity of a world that would otherwise feel terrifying. When you try to force them out of it, you are not acting as a helper. You are acting as a threat. And they will defend against you with everything they have. Look at the people around you. The friend who has always struggled financially but argues passionately about economic systems while refusing to examine their own choices. The family member who generates constant conflict but is absolutely certain the problem lives in everyone else. How many years have you invested trying to shift them with careful, patient logic? How many nights have you spent going over the same conversations in your head? They have not moved, not even slightly, but you have aged through it. You have grown worn. You have grown harder in ways you did not choose. Your compassion has been financing their illusions. Schopenhauer held a stark view of human nature. He believed that a person's fundamental character does not change. Circumstances shift. The core stays fixed. If someone operates as a fool today, they will operate as a fool tomorrow. Accepting this is not easy. It feels like a kind of emotional surgery. You have to look honestly at people you may care about and accept that their limitations are not temporary. Then you stop trying to transform them. You start managing them instead. You manage a fool the way you manage heavy and dangerous equipment. You keep your hands away from the moving parts. You stay behind the marked safety boundary. You expect it to behave exactly as it was designed to behave. When it breaks down, you do not argue with it. You simply disengage. What happens when you finally stop pulling on that rope? What happens when you stop explaining, stop defending, and simply observe the chaos around you without stepping into it? Something significant shifts. You begin to realize how much of your own identity was tied to being the clearest thinker in the room. You realize how much the friction of these endless debates had become a strange source of feeling alive. When you remove that friction, you are left alone with yourself. And this is where the real work begins. Many intelligent people quietly choose to spend time around people who think less clearly than they do. It feels safe. It is easy to appear sharp when the bar is low. It is a kind of psychological comfort zone, but the risk is serious. A strong mind that spends its days surrounded by shallow thinking will gradually begin to shrink toward that level. The mind shapes itself to fit its environment. You must withdraw, not physically into isolation, but mentally. You must build an emotional distance from the noise, and you must become comfortable with being misread. Foolish people will interpret your calm detachment as arrogance. They will say you have become distant. They will read your refusal to engage as a sign that you have nothing to offer. Let them think it. Their conclusions are built on faulty reasoning. Why should a faulty conclusion disturb a sharp mind? Imagine walking through a building full of people who have lost touch with reality. They point at you and insist you are the confused one. Do you stop to present your case? Do you pull out documents to demonstrate your clarity? No, you keep walking. You understand their perception is distorted. The broader world operates in much the same way. The principle holds. When someone who thinks poorly insults you, it is not a real insult. It is an incorrect reading of who you are. When they reject your idea, it is not a failure of your idea. It is confirmation that your idea is operating beyond their range. This level of calm detachment is not coldness. It is precision. It is the clear understanding that your mental energy is a limited resource. Every drop of it poured into someone who is committed to staying confused is a drop taken from your own growth. We have spent a long time celebrating the act of debate. We have built up this image of the sharp thinker standing in front of a crowd, dismantling weak arguments with perfect logic. But look honestly at what actually happens in those exchanges. Nothing ever resolves. The other person never changes their mind. The audience simply becomes louder in support of whoever they already agreed with before the debate started. It is performance. It is theater staged for applause. The minds that produce real results do not perform for applause. They build for outcomes. If you want to be genuinely effective, if you want to move through the world without being constantly pulled off course by people who will not think, you have to leave the theater behind. You have to think like an architect working in a space full of small children. You do not ask the children for permission to build. You do not explain the structural principles to them. You give them something to occupy their attention, and then you get to work while they are distracted. This is the deepest application of Schopenhauer's thinking. You stop fighting the world as it should be and start working with the world as it is. A world shaped largely by emotion, driven by ego, and largely resistant to clear thinking. You do not complain about this. You do not waste your effort trying to fix it. You learn to use it. When you understand that people operate from ego, you use the ego to guide them. When you know they are not moved by logic, you reach them through emotion instead. When you understand they are hungry for validation, you offer just enough to keep the interaction functional. You become the quiet force behind the direction things move. They believe the choices are theirs. They feel in control. But the range of choices available to them was shaped by you, quietly and without announcement. This is the movement from raw intelligence to actual power. Intelligence means knowing you are right. Power means not needing them to know it. Intelligence wins the argument. Power achieves the goal while letting them think they won the argument. You are here because you were exhausted. You were tired of the endless friction, the circular conversations that led nowhere. The feeling that the world around you was resistant to clear thought and you were slowly losing your grip on your own clarity. You thought the answer was a stronger argument, more precise facts, a more convincing way of speaking. Now you understand the real answer. It is a form of release, not surrendering to them. surrendering the need to change them. The moment you truly let go of the desire to be understood by people who are not equipped to understand you, something lifts. The weight disappears. You watch them speak, and instead of frustration, you feel something closer to calm observation. You see the patterns playing out in real time, the predictable cognitive shortcuts, the ego defending itself automatically, the confidence built on nothing. It becomes something you can read and anticipate rather than something that destabilizes you. You are no longer inside their storm. You are watching it from a safe distance. This is the freedom that clarity actually brings, not the warm feeling of being right. The cold, clean ability to remain completely unaffected by people who cannot see what you see. You will never again be genuinely hurt by a fool, because you will never again hand them the authority to define your reality. Your intelligence is no longer something you offer up for their approval. It is a private tool. Use it to build your own life. Keep it sharp. Keep it out of sight. And only draw it when it serves your own direction forward.